Hi Malachy, it's a horrible wet afternoon outside, so we'll have a wee chat again. Um, I saw on social media recently that an army officer from the time of the Troubles in Northern Ireland received a lot of money for a medal he was awarded at the time. In your book, you mentioned that you were not recognised as prisoners of war and the whole conflict was not recognised as a war. Can you give us your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, I can only sort of speculate, like in the normal sense of the word. You know, uh, there was no really what you would call. If you look at any conflict, I suppose if you go back to '69, you have to remember that the war welcomed in here as a peacekeeping force.
The army, yeah.
Yeah, the British Army, and and if you go into Ireland's history, there was over 500,000 Irish people in the British Army. When you think about it, if you go through history, First World War, Second World War, and throughout the history, that is a lot of people for a small country for to join the British Army. And even if you look at James Connolly and Tom Barry and all that there, but I often give that a by ball because I think it was a matter of circumstances to get a few quid into their pocket, or maybe I don't really think at the end of the day it was really loyalty. It was just more or less they're already living in poverty, and if you take the soldiers from the Second World War, they came back to England and they gave off, and I would say that was great leverage for the welfare state to come in with a beverage report and all that there. So it didn't only happen in Ireland, it happened in England or whatever you want. And you can even the universal soldier and all tells you that. But if you get into the technicalities of it all, the United Nations, the international community, uh, the that it was drawn like this wasn't like Algiers, where the French were in Algiers and where the loyalists were actually part of the French thing, but actually they're a revolutionary crowd. I think it's Algiers I'm talking. Maybe I've got the wrong country, but anyway, uh, they actually it was as far as I know it was a successful revolution. But I don't think you could really. I think once you get into comparisons and things like that, it can be a dangerous situation because as what was outlined in the book, I think the sort of marker would be the religious thing in a way, or else the cultural thing. If you even look at Edward Carson, who was a fluent Gaelic speaker and all that there, and if you take for the lines of how long actually this place was colonialised or planted or whatever way it is, you can see that there was what you would call a connection there. And even if you go back to the treaty, uh, and all that there. I'll probably be killed for saying this, but anyway, what Collins got, you know, at that time, the rights and the wrongs of it, it could have been seen as a sort of a victory because colonialism and imperialism from such men as Churchill and all the Red Lloyd George, it was in their very, right to the marrow, it was. But, the unfortunate thing, it caused a civil war and probably uh, it was the beginning and end of what the story was in the northeastern part. And, there's a lot of in betweens there of what has always been happening through the years. But, like, I mean, I think James Colney pointed it out in 1916. If you hoist the tricolour or whatever, the green flag over Dublin, I'm sure he must have been talking about something like that. He says, that they will still rule you through their finances, through their whole array of investments, everything else in this country. If you go to Zimbabwe, Rhodesia and Mugabe was a Marxist, but he sort of turned out. But a lot of these countries that I know of, or what we all know of, they got independence. And I think the United Ireland thing's a very confusing thing. It's really about independence. And even for a country to be independent, it's like everything else. It takes an awful time it takes time to grow. It takes time. So the Gall and Chain, has always been there. The rhetoric, the songs, the republicanism, different other things like that there, and you know, and even if you go into the history, the Irish language, you know, which is just the Irish language, partially has become a political issue. It shouldn't really be a political issue at all. Like, it's just the language.
Malachy, can I just stop you there? You're talking a lot about history. Do you think now that this history that you're talking about and the progression of Ireland to where we are today should be taught in schools? You are part of history, being a blanket man. Do you think it should now become part of school history?
Well, I think it already has become part of school
But
history.
your part and your comrades' part as blanket men, as no wash protest, should this become part of our history, be taught in schools and educate people as part of Irish history?
Of course, and I think it should be taken in from, you know, what all SPAC says, you know, the blanket okay sort of does epitomise probably and the hunger strike what you know followed that protest for having for a long protest and all, but I don't think we, you know, the you know, as long as is all the well
Are you part of history?
well, I suppose I got a mention in Voices from the Graves, and once I first read that book, it was the first time you know, once I seen my name and the person that I was in the cell with, I have to admit I was shocked.
And you're in with Darky Hughes.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know that, but I'm only just saying, I, up until I read that book, I was living in what you would call a world of my own, I suppose, in that way. I think what happened, uh, you know, after the hunger strike and after Sands died and all that there was, of course, an upward shift, uh, politically anyway, you know, and but I think what, you know, as the SDLP sort of were the leading thing, and it come to pass that a lot of seats, like, which was held by just nationalists or SDLP, but that took a bit of time, and the so it would be hard to sort of leave it out, even you know, because before that there are Republicans. Even if you go back to the treaty, there was elections. Elections wasn't really a new thing in Irish history. Now it was hunger strikes or anything like that there. And you know, obviously, I would imagine, even not even from a Republican perspective, and even I think even some loyalists would have agree with what I'm saying, is from a humanitarian point of view, and all that there, the bravery of the hunger strikers in face uh, of what was a hardline British government and all the thing. I think a lot of people would have supported the hunger strike, not because of Republican violence or even loyalist violence, but they did see, they would have supported it probably on a basic thing. You know, it probably wasn't going to really, it had been granted before, it was really no big deal. The big deal, you know, the big deal was really what I would imagine would be our own clothes, come under our own organisations, and that had happened before. There was a precedent for that, you know, and so you know, it was. I think it was very unimaginative of the British government in them circumstances of not just the but then uh, I suppose in all wars is propaganda, and you know, you can win the propaganda battle or you can lose the propaganda battle. And there was people coming up on visits and they were going out and all that there, and of course probably rumours, propaganda, actually prisoners coming out of jail and sort of reciting what they could remember or whatever it was. Uh, but I think uh, you know.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
Okay. In your book, you were just talking about prison there and prisoners coming in and prisoners coming out. You mentioned that to smuggle comms, you used to write them on the tobacco.
Yeah.
And I've seen them in the Republican Museum, Pat Kelly's shed in Dundalk.
Yeah.
How did you do it? The writing was so small. How did you actually smuggle those pieces of paper out?
Well, there actually was a structure, there was a command structure, and as what was outlined, and you know uh, that sort of kept probably the thing together. Although there was a lot of people came off it, it still sort of kept a command structure. But to be, you see, I think from the point of view of what actually did happen, from there was a campaign against the prison officers. Can't remember, but there was about 36 killed, or over there was a fair amount of them killed, and so that campaign, I don't think, sort of bore any fruit in sort of hindsight, or whatever it was. So, like, when it went to the door protest and all that there, it's sort of unreal to think for the length of time on the program. Obviously, the men were getting tired. The men were, there was a tiredness. There was what you would call we were probably living in a world of our own and doing what we really wanted in our own. And there was great comradeship, but there was sort of that I would imagine there had to be mental damage done and all that there. And and it was only human nature that people were tiring out. I think, of course, the hunger strike was the last throw of the dice, and once a doctor comes in and outlines reads the riot act to you and says this can cause serious damage to your health, blah 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 blah. Now, once a doctor says that, he's not talking nonsense. So I think even if you go into that is the inevitability of a hunger strike, and even though you can't really be ordered on it, you're offering yourself as a sacrifice, as what we all know would be the cause. And obviously everybody is different. We're all made of different sort of favours, different other things, but that's actually what happened. But I can remember the statement coming out from the British government, and funny enough, I did believe what they said, and I can remember that they said they did not give in to the hunger strikers. Now, I said that succinctly, and I believe they did not give in to the hunger strikers. But
what about Joe McDonald? You knew him.
Yeah.
What was he like?
He was just a nice fella. Really a nice fella,
Yeah. Yeah.